IVC, Dale Gatefold 33, back with another video. This is quite a belated response video to a thread that Alan, Static Traveller, started. The reason it's so delayed will become evident as we proceed through this video. So yeah, Alan showed the book 1001 Records You Must Hear Before You Die, and challenged us to come up with 5 records that would appear in an alternative version of that. Now, those of you who watch my videos know that that's just not my thing. It's not how I build my collection. I'm not a lists person. I'm not driven by lists and spreadsheets and algorithms. That's just not how I roll. You know, I think lists are not the way to build a collection. And you know, I'd go as far as to say, you know, lists they're for losers. Lists are for losers. They're good. I've said it. Yeah, that's not how I think when I'm collecting. You know, for me, there's a more spiritual, soulful element to collecting the records. I'm not inspired by, you know, where a record sits on a top 1000 or 1001 lists. Music is not a number. You know, music is more than that. So I take inspiration elsewhere: the laughter of children, the crunch of autumn leaves, the glow of a warm summer sunset, you know, the smell of newly grown mown grass, those sorts of things. The feeling you get when you take a breath on a cold, frosty morning, a dewdrop on a spider's web in autumn. Those are the sorts of things that you should draw inspiration from. Birdsong in a forest, those things, and then you take those and then you go to a record shop or a record fair, and you've got those feelings, and you can feel it when you're going through the records. You get that tingle, the smell, the aroma of the records. They speak to you, and you're drawn to a record, and then you put that record in your collection, and your collection has that spiritual fulfillment. Your soul is you know, filled because of that. And so when you do die, you die happy and contented that you are at one with your collection. You're not on that constant quest for something else because it's on a list. So that's how I approach collecting. Those of you who watch my videos will know that already. So yeah, so I've had to try and put myself in the mind of the sorts of people who buy that book. I don't have that book myself. So the sorts of people who would buy that book and follow a different path. I've put myself, and so I've spent a few weeks now, you know, I've books like 1,000 songs, or 30 years of Enemy album charts, or 100 greatest psychedelic records, or The Rough Guide to Rock, or the Essential Rock discography, you know, psychedelia, 101 iconic underground records, you know, 101 essential rock records. These things are, you know, they just don't mean anything to me. The great folk discography, Tapestry of Delights. Who reads this? You know, the ultimate guide to UK rock and pop and beat. Sharp Shock, a comprehensive guide to UK punk and new wave, and apparently the Bible, Galactic Ramble. I mean, I don't know. You know, so having to immerse myself in this has just been, you know, anathema to my soul. Books like this. Encyclopedia of Albums, the 1,000 best ever albums, and you know, someone's gone through and ticked and crossed and put V and C for vinyl and CD against the albums in there. Similar this, all-time top 1,000 albums, and it starts off with 250, rock and pop albums. And you can see here, look, over the years, someone's gone through and put a date and how many of the vinyl records they have. You know, in 2022, they had 208 of the top 250. Did they feel any better about themselves? Did their collection feel any more fulfilled knowing they had 208 of 250 on vinyl? And I mean, the person even went through this as most recently as 8th of April, so only a few days ago, and only 170. I don't know what's happened there. They must have been having some kind of a crisis in their collection and getting rid of records over years, because in 3 years it had gone down by 30. But anyway, or even something like this book here. This is Reviewing My Record Collection, 3,333 albums from A to Z by Stephen Fall. So this is reviews of the Stephen Fall's record collection written by Stephen Fall. Why would anyone want to buy that? What do you achieve by reading Stephen Fall's thoughts on Stephen Fall's records? And, you know, some people have these books, you know, what's this? A melange of musical pipe dreams and pandemonia. This is Psyche from across the rest of the world. But you can tell this has not even been read. So do people think that by buying these books and putting them on the bookshelves, you know, the wisdom is suddenly going to, by osmosis, be imparted into them, and they are going to have a much more fulfilling kind of collecting experience? I really don't understand it, but so I've had to try and immerse myself in all of this over the last few weeks to try and respond to this video. And it's not just books, there's magazines as well, like Q from, when was it, Q from 2008, 50 years of great British music, or Mojo, classic, Led Zeppelin, the story of 69, and 69 albums from 69, and there's again V's and ticks and all about against that, as if this person has gone through and marked off what records they've got. So what? The 100 greatest British albums, 1998, the 100 greatest albums in the universe, not in the world, in the universe. 1998, so that came out February 98. So I wonder what, let's just have a look. What is the greatest album in the universe, not the world, the universe? Number one in 1998 ever, OK Computer by Radiohead. I rest my case, I need to say no more. The case for the prosecution, I think, is proven by that, how these lists are, you know, completely pointless. Take this, for example. So Uncut magazine pulled out this ultimate record collection of the 80s, 75 to 79, 70 to 74, and the 60s. Over 600 albums in alphabetical order, and you can go through and mark off which ones you've got in your collection to give you the satisfaction that you are collecting in the right way. But you know, this costs, how much do these cost? £8.99 these cost. So there's 40 quid spent when someone could have been buying a really good record for that. And then just a year or two later, they flipped it and did the 500 records of the 1960s, but this time ranked. So obviously some people felt they were compelled to buy number one, Velvet Underground. There you go, even more proof. Felt compelled to buy this. What was this? £8.99 as well, so another £9 on getting that for the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the noughties and the 10s to now. 10s to now, what is that? So that's 2010 to 2024. Where does that leave you? I mean, if you were a bit of an OCD collector, that would not be a good way to leave it. Yeah, and do you worry that this has got 500 albums ranked, but these had 600 albums? I mean, some people would be tempted to cross-reference and work out which albums were on one list and not the other, and then think about where they would have been in the rankings. But again, you know, following that goes madness, really. And even same again here, ultimate genre guide to goth, but buying again 200 greatest goth albums ranked, culminating in, I guess, definitive now, they've done the 500 greatest albums of all time ranked. So I suppose you no longer ever need to buy another list if you were this person. And it doesn't stop there. You know, some of these people, they cut magazine articles out, shindigging, what's hot on the shindig turntable, and they've got them going back years and years. And so I have had to immerse myself in all of this and fast track my brain into the psyche of this. You know, there's the Mojo guide to every artist that they did, top 10 going back years. So, you know, or here from Uncut Music in My Life, where artists talk about 10 records. So, you know, I don't know what you would achieve by keeping 15, 20 years worth of what particular artists were inspired by, how that helps you with your collecting. And it, you know, and even just, I mean, there's even more articles here, keeping all of the end of year lists. Was it the 50 best British albums, top 20 cover versions of the 80s, 1978, 1977, 1976, 1973. Mad. So I've had to try and immerse myself in this to just get myself into the psyche of one of these sorts of record collectors to come up with a response for Alan, which is what I'm trying to do here. So what I've had to do as well to pick the records, because obviously my records, as I said, are inspired by different things, is I have put myself in the mind of one of these sorts of collectors, and I downloaded the 2008, I found it online, the 2008 list of the 1001 records, and I analysed it, and I worked out that 15% of those records were from the 60s, 28% from the 70s, 21% from the 80s, 24% from the 90s, and 10% were from the 21st century. And this list came out in 2008. So on that, I thought, well, does that help me? Does that help me pick 5 records? No, not really. So I've had to take that percentage, from all this reading, I've imagined my top 100 albums of all time. Obviously, I didn't have anything like that. I wouldn't. That's not how I roll. And listed those, and then take this percentage to try and come up with an album per year for the last, or certainly for 5 decades. And then I've had to go on various websites, look at the rankings and scores, the numbers of people who've got them on Discogs, come up with a weighted score to develop the 5 records that I'm going to show today. And that's felt terrible and horrible, and I don't feel quite fulfilled with what I've chosen, but I guess that's how these people, these losers, would go about it. So it's been an experience, not one I think I want to repeat. But anyway, I'll get to the records. And I do love these records, don't get me wrong, I do love these records, but whether they would have been the ones on the day that I would have chosen based on the things that drive me, I don't know. So let's get on with it. So from the 60s, Nancy and Lee, oh dear, I'm going to have some trouble here. Nancy and Lee from the 60s, 1968. So according to this method that I've adopted, this is 3.672, but you know, I guess to me, it's much more than that. It's the interplay between two people, a young woman and a world weary man writing songs that are edgy, knowing that woman's father and the mob are looking over them, and the nature of these songs, and particularly the frisson between them, and then knowing that actually they never did ever get it on, even though these songs kind of inspire in your minds the thoughts that they might have. So that's what would have driven me to that record, not a number. From the 70s, we've got Terry Callier's What Colour Is Love? I mean, the picture alone here gets your mind thinking about the meaning behind these wonderful, soulful songs that draw you in. The fact that it's 4.296 really doesn't add to the mix for me. From the 80s, another album that isn't on the 2008 version of 1001 is Bob Dylan's Oh Mercy. You can't get from the number 4.824 that, this came at the end of a period of, religious diversion, probably the wrong word, by Bob Dylan, and it had a number of panned albums, and then he teamed up with Daniel Lanois and come up with these songs of beauty and inspiration and reflection. That doesn't come out of a number at all. Slidey records. The 90s, Belle and Sebastian, the boy with the Arab strap, the tweeness, the innocence, yet the dark, some of the dark content. That contrast just doesn't come out from 3.842. I don't think. So, you get where I'm going here. And finally, we're into the 21st century, and an album I've shown a lot because, the juxtaposition between the kind of content and the sort of edginess and the deepness of the songs and Anne-Marie Campbell's beautiful kind of angelic, almost childlike voice just creates some images in your mind that cannot be conjured up by the number 5.263. So that's my response. I'm not sure what it achieved. It was it was a bit uncomfortable for me to do this, but hopefully there's some enjoyment there. So thanks for the inspiration, Alan. I'll return to my way, I think, of building my collection. Cheers, bye.